Sometimes the people who love us most carry dreams they buried long ago. Sometimes those dreams wake up when we need them most. In a small Czech town called Břecno, there lived a man named Josef Novak. He was a mechanic with oil under his fingernails and grey in his beard. For 30 years, he fixed cars and raised his daughter Anna alone. People knew him as a quiet man. On Anna's wedding day, the pianist got sick. Guests worried. The bride cried. Then Josef walked to the piano. He sat down and put his rough hands on the keys. What happened next shocked everyone. Beautiful music filled the room. Nobody believed it was him. They could not imagine that a simple mechanic could play like that. But Josef had a secret. He once dreamed of being a concert pianist. What made him give up that dream? The story of Josef Novak began long before that wedding day, in a different time when his hands were smooth and his dreams were still alive. He grew up in Břecno, a town where cobblestone streets wound between old houses with red tile roofs. The town sat in a valley surrounded by gentle hills covered in pine trees. In spring, the air smelled of fresh grass and wildflowers. In winter, smoke rose from chimneys and snow covered everything like a soft blanket. Josef was born in 1958, the only child of Martin and Helena Novak. His father worked at the local factory, making machine parts. His mother cleaned houses for wealthy families in the newer part of town. They were not rich, but they were not poor either. They had enough to eat, a warm home, and each other. That was enough for them. When Josef was 6 years old, his mother took him to church on a Sunday morning. The church was old, built in 1700 and something, with high ceilings and stained glass windows that painted the floor with colored light. An organ sat at the front, huge and magnificent. The organist that day was an elderly man named Mr. Dvorak. He played Bach, and the sound filled the church like water filling a cup. Josef stood still, his small hand in his mother's larger one, and listened. He had never heard anything like it before. The music moved through him like a river, carrying something away and leaving something new behind. After the service, he pulled his mother toward the organ. Mr. Dvorak was gathering his sheet music, his fingers bent with age. Josef looked up at him with wide eyes. "Can I touch it?" he asked. Mr. Dvorak smiled, a kind smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He lifted Josef onto the bench and let him press one key. The sound was deep and rich, and Josef felt it in his chest. That was the moment everything changed. From that day forward, music was all Josef could think about. He hummed melodies while he ate breakfast. He tapped rhythms on the table during dinner. His mother noticed, of course. Mothers always notice. She spoke to Mr. Dvorak after church the following Sunday. The old man agreed to give Josef lessons, not for money, because the Novaks did not have much to spare, but because he saw something in the boy's eyes. He saw hunger, the kind that cannot be fed with bread. Josef's lessons began that autumn. Twice a week, after school, he walked to Mr. Dvorak's small house on the edge of town. The house smelled of old books and pipe tobacco. A piano sat in the front room, an upright with yellowed keys and a few scratches on the wood. It was not a grand instrument, but to Josef it was the most beautiful thing in the world. Mr. Dvorak was a patient teacher. He started with the basics, teaching Josef how to sit, how to hold his hands, how to read notes on the staff. Josef absorbed everything like a sponge. He practiced every day, even though his family did not own a piano. He practiced on a piece of cardboard his father had drawn keys on with a marker. He pressed the paper keys and heard the music in his mind. His father thought it was a waste of time. "What good is music?" Martin would say. "It does not put food on the table. It does not fix a broken engine." But Helena defended her son. "Let the boy dream," she said. "We all need something to dream about." By the time Joseph was 10, he could play simple pieces by Mozart and Beethoven. By 12, he was playing Chopin. By 15, he was performing at school concerts and local events. People in Brezno began to know his name. They would say, "That is the Novak boy. The one who plays piano like an angel." Joseph's talent was undeniable, but talent alone does not build a future. His father still worked at the factory. His mother still cleaned houses. There was no money for a conservatory, no money for advanced teachers, no money for the kind of education that would turn a gifted boy into a professional musician. Mr. Dvorak did what he could. He introduced Joseph to more complex pieces, pushed him to practice harder, encouraged him to audition for music schools. When Joseph was 17, Mr. Dvorak arranged for him to audition at the conservatory in Prague. It was a 5-hour train ride from Brezno. Joseph had never been to Prague before. His mother packed him a lunch of bread and cheese and gave him money for the train ticket. She kissed his forehead and told him to play from his heart. The audition was held in a large room with high ceilings and excellent acoustics. There were other students there, boys and girls from all over the country, all of them talented, all of them hungry for the same dream. Joseph waited his turn, his hands sweating, his heart pounding. When they called his name, he walked to the piano, sat down, and began to play. He played a Rachmaninoff prelude, one of the most difficult pieces he knew. His fingers moved across the keys with precision and passion. He forgot about the judges, forgot about the other students, forgot about everything except the music. When he finished, there was silence. Then one of the judges, an older woman with silver hair, nodded. "That was very good," she said. Joseph returned to Brezno and waited. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. He had been accepted. The conservatory wanted him. It was the happiest day of his life, and the saddest. His father sat at the kitchen table and read the letter. Then he put it down and looked at Joseph. "We cannot afford this," he said. "The tuition, the housing, the books. We do not have that kind of money." Joseph felt his dream crumble like dry bread. "But there must be a way," he said. "There is always a way." His mother touched his shoulder. "Perhaps you could work," she said. "Perhaps you could find a job in Prague and study at the same time." Joseph nodded, but he knew how hard that would be. The conservatory demanded full-time commitment. There would be no time for a job, no time for anything except music. He tried anyway. He went to Prague with a small suitcase and a heart full of hope. He found a tiny room in a boarding house and enrolled in classes. For 3 months he tried to make it work. He played piano during the day and worked at night washing dishes in a restaurant. He slept 4 hours a night and survived on coffee and bread. But it was not enough. The tuition bills piled up. The landlady demanded rent. His body grew tired, and his playing suffered. One night, he sat in his small room and cried. He cried for the dream he could not reach, for the life he wanted but could not have. The next morning, he packed his suitcase and took the train back to Brezno. When he arrived home, his mother held him and said nothing. His father looked at him and nodded. "You tried," Martin said. "That is all a man can do." Joseph found work at the local garage. The owner, a man named Mr. Kolar, needed someone to help with repairs. Joseph had no experience with cars, but he was smart and he learned quickly. He started by changing oil and rotating tires. Within a year, he could rebuild an engine. The work was hard and dirty. His hands, once soft and clean, became calloused and stained with grease. He came home each night exhausted, too tired to even think about playing piano. Mr. Dvorak visited him one evening. The old man sat in the Novak kitchen and drank tea with Helena. "Where is the piano, Joseph?" he asked. Joseph shrugged. "I do not play any more," he said. Mr. Dvorak frowned. "That is a waste," he said. "You have a gift." Joseph looked at his hands, at the oil under his fingernails. "This is my life now," he said. Mr. Dvorak left without saying more, but Joseph could see the disappointment in his eyes. Time passed. Joseph worked at the garage and saved his money. He was 22 when he met a woman named Eliska. She worked at the bakery in town, a pretty girl with dark hair and bright eyes. She smiled at him one morning when he came in to buy bread, and he smiled back. They began talking, then walking together in the evenings, then falling in love. Eliska knew about Joseph's past, about his talent and his lost dream. She asked him once why he did not play anymore. He told her the truth. "It hurts too much," he said. "It reminds me of what I cannot have." She took his hand. "Maybe one day you will play again," she said, "when the pain is less." They married in the spring of 1982. It was a small wedding in the same church where Joseph had first heard the organ. Mr. Dvorak played the music, and Joseph stood at the altar and watched Eliska walk toward him. She was beautiful, and in that moment he felt something he had not felt in years. He felt hope. They had a daughter a year later. They named her Anna, after Eliska's grandmother. Anna was a quiet baby, with her mother's dark hair and her father's serious eyes. Joseph loved her instantly, completely, the way a man loves something he never knew he needed. Life was good for a while. Joseph worked hard at the garage, and Mr. Kolar eventually made him a partner. Eliska stayed home with Anna and baked bread to sell to neighbors. They were not wealthy, but they were happy. They had enough. But happiness is fragile, and life does not always let us keep what we love. When Anna was 5 years old, Eliska began to feel tired all the time. She thought it was just exhaustion from raising a child and managing the house. But the tiredness did not go away. She went to the doctor, and the doctor ran tests. The results came back, and they were not good. Cancer. The word hung in the air like a dark cloud. Eliska fought for 2 years. She endured treatments and hospital stays and pain that Joseph could barely watch. Anna was too young to understand fully, but she knew her mother was sick. She would crawl into bed with Eliska and lie quietly beside her, as if her small presence could somehow make things better. Eliska died on a cold morning in February 1990. Joseph held her hand as she took her last breath. Anna stood in the doorway, only 7 years old, watching her father cry. After the funeral, Joseph did not know how to keep going, but he had Anna, and Anna needed him. So he got up every morning, made her breakfast, walked her to school, went to work, came home, made dinner, helped her with homework, tucked her into bed. He did it all like a man moving through fog, one step at a time, because stopping was not an option. The years passed slowly. Anna grew from a child into a teenager. She was smart and kind, with her mother's warmth and her father's quiet strength. She did well in school and had friends and seemed to carry her grief with grace. Joseph was proud of her, so proud it sometimes hurt. He gave her everything he could. He worked long hours to pay for her clothes and school supplies and the small extras that make life bearable. He went to every parent-teacher meeting, every school event, every moment that mattered. But he never played piano again. The instrument in Mr. Dvorak's old house had been sold after the teacher passed away. Joseph's cardboard keyboard had long since been thrown out. There was no music in his life anymore, only work and routine and the steady rhythm of survival. People in town still remembered that Joseph had once been talented. Sometimes they would mention it, say something like, "Did you not used to play piano, Joseph?" He would nod and change the subject. That part of his life was over, buried beneath years of loss and responsibility. Anna knew her father had played once, but she had never heard him. She asked him about it a few times when she was younger. "Why did you stop, Papa?" she would say. He would give her vague answers. Life got busy. I had other things to do. She stopped asking eventually. Now Anna was 26, a grown woman with her own life. She worked as a teacher at the local primary school. She had a fiancé named Thomas, a good man who worked as an engineer in the city. They were getting married in 3 weeks, and Joseph was happy for her. He was also terrified. Not of losing her, exactly, but of the change that was coming. She would move away, start her own family, build her own life. He would be alone in the house where Eliska had died, where Anna had grown up, where so many memories lived in the walls. But he did not say any of this to Anna. He smiled and told her he was proud. He helped her plan the wedding, paid for the dress and the flowers and the reception. He did everything a father should do. The wedding was set for a Saturday in late May. The ceremony would be held in the same church where Joseph and Eliska had married, where Joseph had first fallen in love with music. The reception would be in a rented hall nearby. Anna had hired a pianist to play during the ceremony, and a small band for the reception. Everything was planned. Everything was ready. Joseph pressed his suit and polished his shoes. He was ready to walk his daughter down the aisle, to give her away, to let her go. He did not know that in 3 weeks, everything would change. He did not know that the dream he had buried 30 years ago was about to wake up. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 days before the wedding. Joseph was under a car, replacing a worn brake line, when his apprentice Marek called down to him. "Joseph, phone for you. It is Anna." Joseph rolled out from under the vehicle and wiped his hands on a rag. He walked to the small office at the front of the garage and picked up the receiver. "Hello, sweetheart," he said. Papa, Anna's voice was tight with worry. "We have a problem." Joseph's chest tightened. "What is wrong?" "The pianist," she said. "Mr. Baron. He is in the hospital." Joseph sat down in the creaky office chair. "What happened?" "He collapsed yesterday evening," Anna said. "His wife called me this morning. They think it was a stroke. He is stable now, but the doctors say he will be in the hospital for weeks, maybe months. He cannot play at the wedding." Joseph closed his eyes and took a breath. "I am sorry, Anna. That is terrible news. But we can find someone else, yes. There must be other pianists." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Anna spoke, and her voice cracked. "Papa, I have called everyone. Everyone. There is no one available on such short notice. It is Saturday, 3 days away. Every musician I know is already booked or out of town. I even called the music school in the city. They have no one." Joseph heard the tears in her daughter's voice, and his heart broke a little. "It will be all right," he said, trying to sound calm. "We will figure something out. Maybe we can use recorded music." Anna sniffled. "It will not be the same. I wanted live music. I wanted it to be perfect. Everything else is perfect. The dress, the flowers, the food. But without music during the ceremony, it will feel empty." Joseph wanted to reach through the phone and hold his daughter the way he had held her when she was small and afraid of thunderstorms. "Listen to me," he said. "Your wedding will be beautiful, no matter what. Thomas loves you. You love him. That is what matters. The rest is just details." "I know, Papa," she said quietly. "But I wanted it to be special. I wanted it to be something we would all remember." "It will be," Joseph said. "I promise." After he hung up, Joseph sat in the office for a long time. He stared at the calendar on the wall, at the red circle around Saturday. 3 days. He thought about Anna, about how hard she had worked to plan this wedding, about how much it meant to her. He thought about Eliska, about how she would have wanted their daughter's day to be perfect. He thought about Mr. Barron lying in a hospital bed, unable to play. And then for the first time in decades, he thought about himself sitting at a piano. The thought came unbidden, unwanted, like a ghost slipping through a locked door. He pushed it away immediately. No. That part of his life was over. He had not touched a piano in 30 years. His fingers were stiff from work, his mind rusty from disuse. He would not even know where to begin. But the thought did not go away. It lingered in the back of his mind all day as he worked on cars, all evening as he made dinner, all night as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Could he do it? Could he play at Anna's wedding? The idea was absurd. He was a mechanic, not a musician. His hands were made for wrenches and engine parts, not for delicate keys and complex melodies. And even if he remembered how to play, even if his fingers could still be enough the way they would it be good enough for his daughter's wedding? He barely slept that night. When morning came, he got up and went to work, but his mind was elsewhere. Marek noticed. "You are quiet today, boss," Marek said. "Everything okay?" Joseph nodded. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About something I have not thought about in a very long time." That afternoon, Joseph left work early. He drove through town, past the bakery where Eliska had worked, past the school where Anna now taught, past the church where the wedding would be held. He parked his truck and sat there for a moment, looking at the old stone building. Then he got out and walked inside. The church was empty. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting the pews with color. Joseph walked slowly down the aisle, his footsteps echoing in the quiet space. At the front of the church, near the altar, sat a piano. It was not the same piano from his youth. That one had been replaced years ago. This one was newer, a small grand with a polished black finish. Joseph stood before it, his heart pounding. He had not been this close to a piano in 3 decades. Slowly, carefully, He reached out and lifted the cover from the keys. They gleamed in the light, white and black, perfectly arranged. He sat down on the bench. It felt strange, foreign, like sitting in a chair in someone else's house. He placed his hands on the keys, and they felt cold under his rough palms. He pressed one note, middle C. The sound rang out clear and pure, filling the empty church. Joseph closed his eyes. He pressed another note, then another. A simple scale, C major, the first thing Mr. Dvorak had ever taught him. His fingers stumbled over the keys. They were stiff, clumsy, not at all like the nimble fingers of his youth. But the muscle memory was still there, buried deep, waiting. He tried a simple melody, something he had played 1,000 times as a boy. Für Elise by Beethoven. The notes came haltingly, with mistakes and pauses. But they came. Joseph opened his eyes and stared at his hands. They were shaking. He felt something rising in his chest, something he had not felt in so long he had forgotten what it was called. It was not quite happiness. It was not quite sadness. It was something in between, something bittersweet and aching. He kept playing, slowly working through the piece. The mistakes did not matter. What mattered was that he was playing again. After 30 years of silence, music was coming from his hands. He did not know how long he sat there. Time seemed to stop. When he finally lifted his hands from the keys, the sun had moved across the sky. The church was darker now, the colored light fading. Joseph stood up and closed the piano cover. He walked out of the church and back to his truck. He sat in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel. His hands were sore, his fingers stiff, but there was a strange lightness in his chest. That evening, Anna called again. "Papa," she said, "I think we are going to have to use recorded music. I cannot find anyone." Before Joseph could think, before he could stop himself, he said, "I will do it." There was silence on the other end. "What?" Anna said. "I will play the piano at your wedding," Joseph said. The words hung in the air. Anna laughed, a nervous, confused laugh. "Papa, what are you talking about?" "You do not play piano." "I used to," Joseph said. "A long time ago." "I know, but—" Anna paused. "Papa, that was decades ago. You have not played in— I do not even know how long." 30 years, Joseph said. "I have not played in 30 years. But I can do it, Anna. I want to do it. For you." Anna was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Papa, I do not want you to feel like you have to do this. It is a lot of pressure." "I know," Joseph said, "but I want to. Please, let me do this for you." He could hear his daughter breathing on the other end of the line. He could imagine her face, the way she bit her lip when she was thinking, the way her eyes softened when she was touched by something. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay, Papa, if you really want to. Thank you." After he hung up, Joseph sat in his kitchen and realized what he had just done. He had 3 days to prepare. 3 days to remember everything he had forgotten. 3 days to turn his stiff, work-worn hands back into the hands of a pianist. 3 days to do the impossible. He did not sleep that night. He lay in bed and thought about the music he would need to play. The wedding march. Something soft and beautiful for when Anna walked down the aisle. Maybe something during the ceremony itself. He tried to remember the pieces he had once known by heart. Could he still play them? Would his hands remember? The next morning, Joseph called Mr. Kolar and told him he needed 2 days off. Mr. Kolar, surprised but understanding, agreed. Joseph drove back to the church. The priest, Father Miroslav, was there arranging flowers. "Joseph," Father Miroslav said, smiling, "what brings you here?" "I need to practice," Joseph said, "on the piano, for Anna's wedding." Father Miroslav raised his eyebrows, but nodded. "Of course. Use it as much as you need." Joseph sat down at the piano and began to play. The first hour was painful. His fingers stumbled and cramped. He made mistakes on pieces he had once played perfectly. Frustration built in his chest, but he did not stop. He kept playing, pushing through the stiffness, forcing his hands to remember. By afternoon, something began to shift. The notes came a little easier. The melodies began to flow. It was not perfect, not even close, but it was better. Joseph played until his hands ached, until his back was sore from sitting, until the light outside the church windows turned orange with sunset. He went home, ate a quick meal, and returned to the church. He played late into the night, alone in the empty building, the music echoing off the stone walls. He did the same thing the next day, and the next. By Friday evening, the night before the wedding, Joseph's hands were raw, and his body was exhausted. But he could play again. Not like he once had, not with the skill and precision of his youth, but well enough to give his daughter the music she wanted, well enough to make her wedding special. He drove home and went to bed early. Tomorrow was the day. Tomorrow he would walk Anna down the aisle. And tomorrow, for the first time in 30 years, he would play piano in front of people. The thought terrified him, but it also filled him with something he had not felt in a very long time. It filled him with purpose. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight and birdsong. Joseph woke before his alarm, his body tense with anticipation and fear. He lay in bed, for a moment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the day ahead. Today his daughter would get married. Today he would give her away. And today he would do something he had not done in 3 decades. He got up and made coffee. His hands were sore from 2 days of constant practice. He flexed his fingers, feeling the stiffness in the joints. They were not the hands of a young man anymore. They were thick and calloused, scarred from years of working with tools and engines. But they would have to be enough. He sat at the kitchen table and drank his coffee slowly. The house was quiet. It had been quiet for 16 years, ever since Eliska died. Sometimes Joseph still expected to hear her footsteps in the hallway, her voice calling to him from another room. But there was only silence. He thought about Anna, about the little girl she had been and the woman she had become. He remembered teaching her to ride a bicycle, holding the back of the seat as she pedaled nervously down the street. He remembered her first day of school, how she had cried and clung to his leg until her teacher gently pried her away. He remembered countless evenings helping her with homework at this very table, her small hand gripping a pencil, her tongue sticking out slightly as she concentrated. All of those moments had led to this one. Today she would marry Thomas and begin a new chapter of her life. Joseph was happy for her. He truly was. But there was a sadness, too, a sense of something ending. After breakfast, Joseph showered and dressed in his suit. It was the same suit he had worn to Eliska's funeral, dark grey with a white shirt and a simple tie. He had gained a little weight over the years, and the jacket was snug across his shoulders, but it still fit well enough. He looked at himself in the mirror. His hair was more grey than brown now. Lines creased his forehead and the corners of his eyes. He looked like what he was, a man in his late 50s who had worked hard and lived through loss. But today, he would be more than that. Today he would be a musician again, even if just for a few hours. The thought made his stomach churn with anxiety. What if he forgot the music? What if his hands cramped up in the middle of a piece? What if he embarrassed Anna in front of all her friends and family? He pushed the thoughts away and straightened his tie. He would not fail her. He could not. At 10 in the morning, Joseph drove to Anna's apartment. She was staying there until after the ceremony, getting ready with her bridesmaids. Joseph had arranged to pick her up and drive her to the church. When he arrived, Anna's best friend, Petra, opened the door. She smiled at him. "She is almost ready, Mr. Novak. Come in." Joseph stepped inside. The apartment was full of women in matching lavender dresses, all of them fussing over hair and makeup and flowers. There was laughter and nervous chatter, the kind of joyful chaos that comes with weddings. Then Anna emerged from the bedroom, and Joseph forgot how to breathe. She wore a white dress, simple and elegant, with lace sleeves and a flowing skirt. Her dark hair was swept up in a soft bun, and a thin veil cascaded down her back. She looked so much like Eliska that for a moment Joseph thought he had stepped back in time. Anna saw him and smiled. Her eyes were bright with tears. "Papa," she said, "how do I look?" Joseph's throat was tight. He could not speak for a moment. Then he managed, "You look beautiful. You look just like your mother." Anna crossed the room and hugged him carefully, mindful of her dress. "Thank you, Papa," she whispered, "for everything." Joseph held his daughter and felt his own eyes sting with tears. He blinked them away. This was a happy day. He would not cry. At least, not yet. They drove to the church together, Anna in the passenger seat, her dress carefully arranged so it would not wrinkle. She was quiet, her hands folded in her lap. Joseph glanced at her. "Nervous?" he asked. "A little," she admitted, "but mostly excited." "Thomas is a good man," Joseph said. "He will take care of you." "I know," Anna said. She looked at her father. "Papa, about the music. Are you sure you want to do this? You do not have to. I know you have been practicing. But if it is too much—" "I want to do it," Joseph said firmly. "I am ready." Anna smiled. "Okay. I trust you." Those 3 words, "I trust you," settled over Joseph like a warm blanket. His daughter trusted him. That was all that mattered. They arrived at the church half an hour before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. Guests were already gathering outside, dressed in their finest clothes, chatting and laughing. Joseph parked the truck and helped Anna out, holding her hand as she navigated the steps in her dress. Inside, the church was cool and dim. Flowers decorated the altar and the ends of the pews. White ribbons hung along the aisle. Everything looked perfect. Thomas was already there, waiting near the front with his best man. He turned when Anna entered, and his face lit up. Joseph saw the love in the young man's eyes, and he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Yes, Thomas was a good man. Anna would be happy. Father Miroslav approached, his white robes flowing. "Joseph," he said, nodding. Anna, are we ready? Almost, Anna said. She turned to Joseph. Papa, you should go to the piano. People will start coming in soon. Joseph nodded. He squeezed Anna's hand once more, then walked to the front of the church where the piano waited. He sat down on the bench and took a deep breath. The guests began to file in, filling the pews with quiet murmurs and rustling fabric. Joseph kept his eyes on the keys, not looking at the growing crowd. His heart pounded in his chest. He flexed his fingers one more time, then placed them on the keys. He began to play softly, a gentle prelude he had practiced 100 times over the past 2 days. The notes flowed from his fingers, quiet and calm, meant to set the mood as people found their seats. No one paid much attention. They were talking, greeting friends, settling into the pews. Joseph was just background music, and that was fine. He played several short pieces, moving from one to the next without pause. His hands were holding up. The stiffness was there, but it was manageable. The music came, not perfectly, but well enough. Then Father Miroslav signaled that it was time to begin. Joseph transitioned into the processional music. The bridesmaids began to walk down the aisle, one by one, smiling and holding their bouquets. The guests turned to watch. Joseph kept playing, his fingers moving steadily over the keys. Then the moment came. The doors at the back of the church opened, and Anna appeared, her arm linked through Joseph's. No, wait! Joseph realized with a jolt that he was at the piano. He could not walk Anna down the aisle and play at the same time. How had he not thought of this? Panic seized him. He stopped playing, his hands frozen over the keys. The church fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him. Joseph stood up quickly, his face flushing. He had made a terrible mistake. He hurried down the aisle to where Anna stood waiting. I am sorry, he whispered. I forgot. Anna smiled at him, calm and understanding. It is okay, Papa. We will figure it out. But who will play? Joseph asked. Anna looked toward the piano, then back at her father. You will, she said, after you walk me down. But, Joseph started to say. Anna squeezed his arm. Walk me down first. Then you can play while Father Miroslav does the ceremony. We will just change the order a little. Joseph nodded, his heart still racing. Together, they began to walk down the aisle. The guests watched in silence, some of them confused by the interruption, others smiling with understanding. Joseph focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on keeping his arm steady for his daughter. When they reached the front, Thomas stepped forward. Joseph placed Anna's hand in Thomas's hand, and the young man nodded at him with respect and gratitude. Joseph stepped back, then turned and walked quickly to the piano. He sat down, took a breath, and began to play again. This time, he played the piece he had chosen for the ceremony itself, a slow, beautiful arrangement of Ave Maria. The music filled the church, and the guests settled into a peaceful silence. Father Miroslav began to speak, his voice warm and steady, welcoming everyone and talking about the meaning of marriage. Joseph played softly beneath the words, providing a gentle backdrop. His hands moved over the keys, and for the first time since he had agreed to do this, he felt something other than fear. He felt a strange kind of peace. This was right. This was where he was supposed to be. As he played, Joseph glanced up occasionally at Anna and Thomas, standing before the altar. They were holding hands, looking at each other with such love that it made Joseph's chest ache. He thought of Eliska. He wished she could be here to see this, to see their daughter so happy. But in a way, maybe she was. Maybe she was here in the music, in the love that filled this old church, in the beauty of this moment. Joseph played on, his rough hands creating something delicate and lovely, something that would stay with everyone in that room long after the day was over. The ceremony continued, and Joseph kept playing, his music weaving through Father Miroslav's words like thread through fabric. He played softly during the readings, a little louder during the exchange of vows. When Anna and Thomas said, "I do," Joseph added a gentle flourish to the melody, a small musical celebration of their commitment. The guests were quiet, attentive, drawn into the sacredness of the moment. Some of them had begun to notice that the man playing piano was the bride's father. Whispers started to ripple through the pews. "Is that Joseph?" someone murmured. "I did not know he could play." "Neither did I," another voice replied. "When did he learn?" "He used to play," an older woman said, her voice carrying a note of recognition. "Years ago, when he was young. I had forgotten all about it." The whispers grew slightly louder, curiosity spreading through the congregation like gentle waves. But Joseph did not hear them. He was lost in the music, in the movement of his fingers, in the memories that surfaced with each note. He remembered learning this piece with Mr. Dvorak, the old teacher's patient voice guiding him through the difficult passages. He remembered practicing it on his cardboard keyboard, imagining the sound in his mind, because he had no real piano to play. He remembered the dream he had once carried, the dream of playing in concert halls, of making music his life. That dream had died, but something of it remained. Something had survived all these years, buried but not gone, waiting for this moment. Father Miroslav pronounced Anna and Thomas husband and wife. Thomas kissed his bride, and the church erupted in applause. Joseph transitioned seamlessly into the recessional music, a joyful, triumphant piece that matched the mood perfectly. Anna and Thomas walked back down the aisle hand in hand, their faces glowing with happiness. The wedding party followed, and then the guests began to file out, chatting excitedly. Joseph kept playing until the last person had left the church. Then he lifted his hands from the keys and sat back, exhausted. His fingers ached. His back was stiff from sitting. But he had done it. He had played at his daughter's wedding, and he had not failed her. Father Miroslav approached, smiling broadly. "Joseph, that was beautiful," he said. "Truly beautiful." "Thank you," Joseph said quietly. The priest put a hand on his shoulder. "You have a gift. It is good to see you using it again." Joseph nodded, but did not reply. He was not sure what to say. He stood up and closed the piano, then walked outside into the bright afternoon sunlight. The guests were gathered on the church steps and in the courtyard, taking photographs and congratulating the newlyweds. Joseph hung back, watching from a distance. He felt oddly separate from the celebration, as if he had completed his part and now belonged in the background again. But Anna saw him. She broke away from a group of friends and hurried over, her dress swishing around her legs. "Papa," she said, throwing her arms around him. "That was incredible. I had no idea you could play like that." Joseph hugged her back. "I am glad it was good enough." "Good enough?" Anna pulled back and looked at him with shining eyes. "Papa, it was more than good enough. It was perfect. Everyone is talking about it." Joseph glanced at the gathered crowd. Several people were indeed looking his way, smiling and nodding. An older couple, the Horak family who lived down the street from him, waved. Joseph waved back awkwardly. Anna took his hand. "Come on," she said. "We need to take pictures." The photographer spent the next hour arranging people into various groupings. Anna and Thomas alone. Anna and Thomas with the wedding party. Anna with her bridesmaids. Thomas with his groomsmen. Then the family photos. Since Eliska was gone and Thomas's parents were divorced, the family photos were small and somewhat melancholy, despite the joyful occasion. Anna stood between Joseph and Thomas, linking arms with both of them. The photographer counted down. 3, 2, 1. Smile. Joseph smiled, but behind it he felt the old familiar ache of Eliska's absence. She should have been here. She should have been in these photos. After the pictures, everyone drove to the reception hall, a modest building at the edge of town, with a large room for dining and dancing. Long tables were set with white cloths and simple flower arrangements. A small stage at one end of the room held equipment for the band Anna had hired. They were a local group, 4 middle-aged men who played at weddings and town festivals. Joseph knew them slightly. They were competent musicians, reliable if not particularly inspired. The guests began to arrive and find their seats. Joseph sat at the head table with Anna, Thomas, and the wedding party. Servers brought out plates of food, roasted chicken and potatoes and vegetables. People ate and talked and laughed. Thomas's best man gave a speech that was funny and heartfelt. One of Anna's bridesmaids gave a speech that made everyone cry a little. Then it was Joseph's turn. He had not prepared anything. He was not good with words, never had been. He stood up slowly, his napkin clutched in his hand, and looked out at the faces watching him. He cleared his throat. "I am not good at speeches," he began. His voice was rough, uncertain. "So I will keep this short." He looked down at Anna. She was watching him with the patient, loving eyes, the same eyes she had given him 1,000 times before, when she was small and he was reading her a bedtime story or bandaging a scraped knee. "Anna," he said, "you have been the greatest joy of my life. From the moment you were born, you have made everything better. Your mother." He paused, swallowing hard. "Your mother would be so proud of you today. I know I am." Thomas, Joseph turned to his new son-in-law. "You are a good man. Take care of my daughter. Love her the way she deserves to be loved." Thomas nodded seriously. "I will, sir. I promise." Joseph sat down quickly, relief washing over him. Anna reached over and squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Papa," she whispered. The meal continued. Dessert was served, a simple but delicious cake made by the same bakery where Eliska had once worked. Joseph ate his slice slowly, savoring the sweetness. Then the band began to set up on the stage. The lead singer, a man named Karl with a graying beard, tested the microphone. 1, 2, 1, 2. He strummed his guitar and nodded to the rest of the band. They launched into their first song, a lively folk tune that got people clapping along. Anna and Thomas took to the floor for their first dance as husband and wife. They moved together gracefully, Thomas leading and Anna following, both of them smiling. Other couples joined them, and soon the floor was full of swirling dresses and laughter. Joseph watched from his seat. He did not dance. He had not danced since Eliska died. He was content to sit and observe, to let the younger people enjoy themselves. But then Petra, Anna's best friend, appeared at his elbow. "Mr. Novak," she said, You should dance. Joseph shook his head. No, thank you. I am fine here. Come on, Petra insisted, holding out her hand. Just one dance. Joseph hesitated, then let himself be pulled to his feet. Petra led him onto the dance floor, just as the band started a slower song. They moved awkwardly at first, Joseph stiff and uncertain, but Petra was patient and cheerful. You played beautifully today, she said. Anna told me you had not played in years. 30 years, Joseph said. It must have felt strange, picking it up again. It did, Joseph admitted. But also it felt right, like coming home. Petra smiled. Maybe you should keep playing. Joseph did not answer. He was not sure he wanted to keep playing. Today had been special, an exception, a gift for his daughter. But going back to it regularly, making it a part of his life again, that was something else entirely. The song ended, and Joseph thanked Petra and returned to his seat. The reception continued around him, a blur of music and conversation and celebration. At one point, Karl, the band leader, announced a special request. He called Anna and Joseph to the floor for the father-daughter dance. Joseph's stomach tightened. He had known this was coming, but he had not let himself think about it. Now it was here, and there was no avoiding it. He stood and walked to the center of the floor where Anna waited. The band began to play a soft, slow melody. Joseph took his daughter's hand and placed his other hand on her waist, the way he had been taught to dance so many years ago. They began to move, swaying gently to the music. Anna rested her head on his shoulder. Thank you for today, Papa, she said softly. For everything. For walking me down the aisle. For playing the piano. For being the best father anyone could ask for. Joseph felt his throat tighten. You do not have to thank me, he managed to say. Yes, I do, Anna said. I know how hard it must have been for you to play again. I know you gave up music a long time ago. But you did it anyway. For me. That means everything. Joseph did not trust himself to speak. He just held his daughter and danced with her, this little girl who was now a grown woman, this person he loved more than anything in the world. The song ended too soon. Anna kissed his cheek and whispered, I love you, Papa. I love you too, Joseph said. Then she was gone, swept back into the celebration, and Joseph returned to his seat. He sat alone at the table, watching the party unfold, feeling both part of it and separate from it. The evening wore on. The band played song after song. People danced and drank and celebrated. Joseph's exhaustion caught up with him. His hands still ached from playing earlier. His body was tired in a way that went deeper than physical weariness. But he stayed. He would not leave until Anna and Thomas left. Finally, near midnight, the newlyweds prepared to depart. They would spend the night at a hotel in the city, then leave the next morning for a week-long honeymoon at the coast. Anna changed out of her wedding dress and into a simple blue dress. She and Thomas said their goodbyes, hugging friends and family. Then Anna came to Joseph. She hugged him tightly. Thank you, Papa, she said again, for everything. Be happy, Joseph said. That is all I want. I will, Anna promised. Thomas shook Joseph's hand. Thank you, sir, he said, for welcoming me into your family. You are a good man, Joseph said. Take care of her. I will, Thomas said. Then they were gone, climbing into a car decorated with tin cans and streamers, driving away into the night. The remaining guests began to disperse. Joseph helped carry some dishes to the kitchen, then said his own goodbyes. He drove home through the dark, quiet streets of Brezno, his mind full of the day's events. When he arrived at his house, he sat in the truck for a moment before going inside. The house would be empty. It had been empty for years, but tonight it felt even more so. Anna was truly gone now, starting her own life, her own family. Joseph was alone. He went inside and turned on the lights. The house looked the same as it always did, but something felt different. Joseph walked through the rooms, seeing them as if for the first time. The kitchen where he and Anna had eaten breakfast together for 26 years. The living room where they had watched television on quiet evenings. Anna's bedroom, now empty of her things. Just a bed and a dresser and faded curtains. Joseph stood in the doorway of that room for a long time. Then he went to his own room and lay down on the bed, still wearing his suit. He stared at the ceiling and thought about the day. He thought about walking Anna down the aisle, about playing the piano, about the hukur look on her face when she said "I do." He thought about Eliska and how much he missed her, especially today. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, it was full of dreams. He dreamed of music, of his hands moving over piano keys, of concert halls and applause. He dreamed of Mr. Dvorak standing beside him, nodding with approval. He dreamed of Eliska sitting in the front row, smiling. When he woke Sunday morning, the house was silent. Joseph made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. His hands were still sore. He flexed his fingers and felt the stiffness in the joints. He had not played piano in 30 years, and then he had played for hours yesterday. His body was paying the price. But there was something else, too. Something beyond the physical soreness. There was a restlessness in him, a stirring of something he thought had died long ago. He spent Sunday doing ordinary things. He did laundry. He cleaned the house. He went to the garage and caught up on paperwork. Marek was there, working on a car, even though it was supposed to be his day off. "Boss," Marek said when Joseph walked in. "How was the wedding?" "It was good," Joseph said. "Beautiful." Marek grinned. "I heard you played piano. The whole town is talking about it." Joseph felt his face flush. "It was nothing." "Nothing?" Marek laughed. "Mr. Kolar told me you were amazing. He said people could not believe it." Joseph shrugged and changed the subject. "What are you working on?" But the comments continued over the next few days. Everywhere Joseph went, people mentioned the wedding. They stopped him in the grocery store, at the post office, at the bakery. They said things like, "I had no idea you were so talented, and you should play more often, and why did you ever stop?" Joseph answered politely but briefly. He did not want to talk about it. He did not want to explain the complicated history of his music, the dreams he had given up, the reasons he had walked away. But the questions kept coming, and with them came something unexpected. Invitations. On Monday, Mrs. Berenek, who ran the community center, called the garage. "Joseph," she said, "I heard you play at Anna's wedding. We are having a recital next month for the children's music program. Would you consider playing something, just one piece? It would mean so much to the kids." Joseph hesitated. "I do not think so, Mrs. Berenek. I am very busy." "Please," she said. "Think about it." On Tuesday, Father Miroslav stopped by the garage. "Joseph," he said, "the church choir is performing a concert in a few weeks. We need an accompanist. Would you be willing?" "I have not practiced," Joseph said. "I only played at the wedding because it was for Anna." "I understand," Father Miroslav said. "But you are very talented. It seems a shame to let that talent go to waste again." Joseph did not know what to say. The priest smiled kindly and left. On Wednesday, a man Joseph barely knew, Mr. Zajic, who taught at the music school in the city, came to the garage. He introduced himself and got straight to the Schatzul point. "I heard about your performance at the wedding," Mr. Zajic said. "Several people have told me about it. I understand you studied music when you were young." Joseph nodded warily. "I did. A long time ago." Mr. Zajic pushed his glasses up his nose. "I teach piano at the conservatory. I am always looking for talented students to mentor, but I am also looking for experienced players to help with our community outreach programs. We go to nursing homes, hospitals, schools. We play for people who do not often get to hear live music. It is very rewarding work." "I am not experienced," Joseph said. "I have not played in 30 years, until last week." "But you played at the wedding," Mr. Zajic said. "And from what I hear, you played beautifully. That tells me your skill is still there. It just needs to be dusted off." Joseph shook his head. "I appreciate the offer, but I do not think I am the right person." Mr. Zajic handed him a business card. "Think about it," he said. "Call me if you change your mind." Joseph took the card and set it on his desk. He had no intention of calling. That evening, Joseph sat in his living room and stared at the television without really watching it. His mind kept drifting back to the piano, to the feeling of playing again after so many years. It had been terrifying, yes, but it had also been exhilarating. For those few hours, he had been someone other than Joseph the mechanic. He had been Joseph the musician, the person he had once dreamed of being. But that was just one day, he told himself. One exception. It did not mean he should start playing again regularly. He had a life, a job, responsibilities. He did not have time for music. Yet the restlessness would not go away. On Thursday evening, Joseph found himself driving to the church. He told himself he was just going for a walk, just getting some fresh air. But his feet carried him inside, and before he knew it, he was sitting at the piano. He played softly, not wanting to disturb anyone who might be in the building. He started with simple scales and exercises, warming up his stiff fingers. Then he moved into actual pieces. Feur Elise, Moonlight Sonata, Clair de Lune. The music flowed from his hands more easily than it had at the wedding. His muscle memory was waking up, remembering things his conscious mind had forgotten. He lost track of time. When he finally stopped and looked up, it was dark outside. He had been playing for over 2 hours. Father Miroslav appeared from the back of the church. Joseph jumped, startled. "I am sorry," he said. "I did not mean to disturb you." "You did not disturb me," Father Miroslav said. "I was in my office doing paperwork. Your playing was a pleasant background." Joseph stood up. "I should go." Father Miroslav walked closer. "Joseph, may I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you stop playing all those years ago? Why did you give it up?" Joseph was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because I had to. because life did not give me another choice. But you had talent, Father, Miroslav said gently. Real talent. That does not just go away, because life gets hard. Joseph looked at the piano. Maybe not, he said. But sometimes talent is not enough. Sometimes you need the money, and time, and opportunities that do not come. The priest nodded slowly. And now you have time. Your daughter is grown and married. Your business is successful. What is stopping you now? Joseph did not have an answer. He said good night to Father Miroslav and left the church. But the question followed him home and kept him awake that night. What was stopping him now? Fear, perhaps. Fear of failing. Fear of not being as good as he once was. Fear of wanting something too much and being disappointed again. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe it was just easier to keep living the life he had built, the safe, predictable life of work and routine, than to risk opening himself up to something that had once caused him so much pain. Friday came, and with it more people asking about the wedding, more comments about his playing. Joseph started to feel overwhelmed. He wanted things to go back to normal, to the quiet anonymity he had enjoyed before. But the town was small, and news traveled fast. Everyone knew that Joseph Novak, the mechanic, had played piano at his daughter's wedding. Everyone wanted to talk about it. That evening, Anna called. She and Thomas were back from their honeymoon, tanned and happy. "Papa," she said, "I have been hearing things." "What things?" Joseph asked. "That people are asking you to play, at the community center, at the church, at the music school." "It is nothing," Joseph said. "Just talk." Anna was quiet for a moment. "Papa, would it be so bad? To play again?" "I mean, really play, not just once." Joseph sighed. "I do not know, sweetheart. It has been so long." "But you loved it," Anna said. "I could see it on your face at the wedding. When you were playing, you looked— I do not know. You looked alive, happy." Joseph did not know what to say. Was that true? Had he looked happy? "I do not want you to be alone in that house," Anna said softly. "I worry about you. I know you say you are fine, but Papa, you need something. Something that is yours. Something that brings you joy." "I have my work," Joseph said. "That is not the same," Anna said. "Work is just work. Music is different. Music is part of who you are." After they hung up, Joseph sat in his kitchen and thought about what his daughter had said. Music is part of who you are. Was that true? He had spent 30 years trying to bury that part of himself, trying to be just a mechanic, just a father, just a man doing what needed to be done. But maybe Anna was right. Maybe you could not bury something that fundamental. Maybe it always stayed with you, waiting. Saturday morning, Joseph woke with a decision forming in his mind. He was not sure it was the right decision, but it was a decision nonetheless. He would play again. Not for money, not for fame, nothing like that. But he would play. For himself, for the simple joy of making music. He called Mrs. Berenek at the community center. "I will play at your recital," he said. Mrs. Berenek sounded delighted. "Oh, Joseph, thank you. Thank you so much. The children will be thrilled." He called Father Miroslav. "I will accompany the choir," he said. if the offer is still open. It is absolutely still open, Father Miroslav said. We rehearse on Wednesday evenings. Can you make it? I will be there, Joseph said. He did not call Mr. Zajic yet. That felt like too big a step. But he kept the business card, tucking it into his wallet where he would see it every day. Over the next 2 weeks, Joseph began to reshape his life around music. He went to the church every evening after work and practiced for an hour or two. He attended choir rehearsal on Wednesday and learned the pieces they would be performing. He chose a solo piece for the community center recital, a Chopin nocturne that had always been one of his favorites. His fingers grew stronger. The stiffness began to fade. The calluses from his mechanic work did not go away, but somehow they did not interfere with his playing. If anything, they made his fingers more resilient, able to press the keys firmly without pain. Joseph found himself thinking about music throughout the day. While he worked on cars, melodies would run through his head. He would hum them quietly, working out passages that had given him trouble during practice. Marek noticed the change in him. "You seem different, boss," he said one afternoon. "Happier?" Joseph shrugged, but he could not deny it. There was a lightness in him that had not been there before, a sense of purpose beyond just getting through each day. The community center recital was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in late June. Joseph arrived early, his stomach tight with nerves. The recital was being held in the center's main room, a modest space with folding chairs set up in rows. A piano sat at the front, not a great instrument, but decent enough. Children from the music program performed first, playing simple pieces with varying degrees of skill. Some were quite good. Others struggled through their songs, their parents watching with encouraging smiles. Joseph waited backstage, listening. When it was his turn, Mrs. Berenek introduced him. "And now," she said, "we have a very special guest, Joseph Novak, who many of you know as our local mechanic, will be playing for us. Please welcome him." Joseph walked onto the small stage. The audience was mostly parents and grandparents, about 40 people in total. They applauded politely. Joseph sat at the piano and adjusted the bench. He placed his hands on the keys and took a breath. Then he began to play the Chopin nocturne. The piece was slow and lyrical, full of emotion and delicate phrasing. Joseph poured himself into it, forgetting about the audience, forgetting about his nerves. He played the way Mr. Dvorak had taught him all those years ago, with feeling and precision, letting the music speak for itself. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Then the applause came, louder and more enthusiastic than before. People stood up. Joseph looked out at them, surprised. He had not expected this reaction. He stood and bowed slightly, then left the stage. Afterward, people surrounded him. They shook his hand and thanked him and asked questions. "Where did you learn to play like that? Why have you been hiding this talent?" "Will you play at other events?" Joseph answered as best he could, but he felt overwhelmed. He had not realized how much attention this would bring. He slipped away as soon as he could and drove home. That evening, Anna called. "Papa," she said, "I heard about the recital. Mrs. Berenek told me you were wonderful." "It was fine," Joseph said. "Just a small thing." "It was not a small thing," Anna said. "You are really doing this. You are playing again." "I suppose I am," Joseph said. He could hear the smile in her voice. "I am proud of you, Papa." The choir concert was 2 weeks later, held in the church on a Sunday evening. The choir consisted of about 20 people, mostly older folks who had been singing together for years. They were not professional, but they loved music, and that love came through in their performance. Joseph sat at the piano, playing the accompaniment for each song. It was more challenging than playing solo because he had to follow the choir's tempo and dynamics, adjusting his playing to support their voices. But he managed it well. The church was full, perhaps 100 people or more. When the concert ended, the applause was long and warm. Father Miroslav thanked everyone for coming and made a special mention of Joseph. "We are blessed to have such a talented pianist in our community," he said. Joseph felt his face redden, but he also felt something else. Pride, perhaps, a sense that he was contributing something meaningful. After the concert, an elderly woman approached him. She had tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "That was beautiful. My husband loved this church. He died last year. And tonight, hearing that music, I felt like he was here with me." Joseph did not know what to say. He just nodded and squeezed her hand. Moments like that made him realize that music was more than just notes and technique. It was connection. It was a way of touching people's hearts, of bringing comfort and joy and meaning. Over the next month, Joseph continued to play. He performed at a summer festival in the town square, at a birthday party for one of Mr. Kolar's friends, at a retirement home where the elderly residents listened with misty eyes. Each performance became a little easier. His confidence grew. He was still nervous before each one, but the nerves were manageable now, even exciting in a way. He started to explore new music, pieces he had never learned before. He bought sheet music and spent hours at the church piano, working through difficult passages. His technique improved. His playing became more nuanced, more expressive. One evening in July, Joseph pulled Mr. Zajic's business card from his wallet and stared at it. The music teacher had invited him to help with community outreach. Joseph had dismissed the idea at first, but now it seemed less impossible. He called the number on the card. Mr. Zajic answered on the third ring. "This is Joseph Novak," Joseph said. "From Brezno. You came to my garage a while back." "Yes," Mr. Zajic said immediately. "I remember. How are you?" "I have been thinking about your offer," Joseph said. "About playing at nursing homes and hospitals. Is that still something you need help with?" "Absolutely," Mr. Zajic said. "We can always use more volunteers." "Would you be interested?" "I think so," Joseph said. "Yes." "Wonderful," Mr. Zajic said. "Let me give you some details." They arranged for Joseph to join a group of musicians who performed twice a month at various facilities around the region. The first performance was at a nursing home about 30 minutes from Brezno. Joseph arrived on a Saturday morning with 3 other musicians, a violinist, a cellist, and a flutist. They set up in the nursing home's common room. Residents were wheeled in or walked in with the help of nurses. Some looked alert and interested. Others seemed barely aware of their surroundings. Joseph felt a pang of sadness looking at them. These were people at the end of their lives, many of them lonely, many of them forgotten by the world. They began to play. Joseph accompanied the other musicians on familiar classical pieces and folk songs. As the music filled the room, he watched the residents. Some of them closed their eyes and swayed slightly. Others tapped their feet or fingers. One woman, very old and frail, began to cry. Joseph played on, moved by their reactions. After the performance, several residents thanked them. One man, who could barely speak due to a stroke, gripped Joseph's hand and nodded, his eyes full of gratitude. That experience changed something in Joseph. He realized that his music could do more than entertain. It could heal, or at least comfort. It could reach people in ways that words could not. He continued with the outreach program, playing at hospitals and nursing homes and rehabilitation centers. Each performance reminded him why music mattered, why he had fallen in love with it in the first place. Summer turned to autumn. The days grew shorter and cooler. Leaves turned gold and red and fell from the trees. Joseph's life had settled into a new rhythm. He worked at the garage during the day and played piano in the evenings and on weekends. He was busier than he had been in years, but he was also happier. Anna and Thomas visited often. They were talking about starting a family, and the thought of becoming a grandfather filled Joseph with unexpected joy. One October evening, Joseph was practicing at the church when Father Miroslav came in and sat in one of the pews. He listened for a while, then said, "Joseph, can I ask you something?" "Of course," Joseph said, pausing his playing. "Have you ever thought about teaching?" "Teaching," Joseph repeated. "Piano? I do not know. I have never taught before." Father Miroslav leaned forward. "There are children in this town who would benefit from lessons. Not everyone can afford to go to the music school in the city. But you have the skill and the patience. I think you would be a good teacher." Joseph thought about Mr. Dvorak, about how the old man had taught him for free because he saw potential in a young boy. Maybe he could do the same. Maybe he could pass on what he had learned. "I will think about it," Joseph said. A week later, a woman named Mrs. Svoboda came to the garage with her 10-year-old son, Lucas. "Mr. Novak," she said, "Father Miroslav told me you might be willing to give piano lessons. My son loves music, but we cannot afford the school in the city. I was wondering if you might consider teaching him." Joseph looked at the boy. Lucas was small for his age, with dark eyes and a shy smile. He reminded Joseph of himself at that age. "How much do you love music?" Joseph asked the boy. "A lot," Lucas said quietly. "More than anything." Joseph nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "I will teach you. But I have conditions. You must practice every day. You must work hard. And you must promise me that you will not give up, even when it gets difficult." Lucas nodded eagerly. "I promise." They arranged for lessons twice a week at the church. Joseph charged very little, just enough to cover the cost of sheet music. He did not need the money. He needed the purpose. Teaching Lucas was harder than Joseph expected. The boy was enthusiastic but unfocused, prone to making the same mistakes over and over. Joseph had to learn patience, had to remember that not everyone learned at the same pace. But slowly, Lucas improved. His fingers grew stronger. His rhythm became steadier. He began to play simple pieces with real musicality. Watching the boy's progress filled Joseph with satisfaction. This was what Mr. Dvorak must have felt, he thought. This sense of passing something on, of planting seeds that would grow long after you were gone. Word spread, and soon other parents were asking about lessons. By November, Joseph had 5 students, all children from families who could not afford expensive instruction. He taught them in the evenings, squeezing lessons in between his work at the garage and his own practice time. It was exhausting, but it was also deeply fulfilling. One cold November evening, Joseph was walking home from the church after a lesson when he ran into Mr. Kohler. The older man was closing up the bakery across the street. "Joseph," Mr. Kohler called out. "Wait a moment." Joseph stopped, and Mr. Kohler crossed the street to join him. "I have been meaning to talk to you," Mr. Kohler said. "About what?" Joseph asked. "About the garage," Mr. Kohler said. "You have been distracted lately. Coming in late, leaving early. Your mind is somewhere else." Joseph felt a flash of guilt. "I am sorry. I will do better." Mr. Kohler held up a hand. "I am not criticizing you. I am saying, maybe it is time for a change." "What do you mean?" Joseph asked. "You are a partner in the garage," Mr. Kohler said. "But your heart is not in it anymore. Your heart is in music. I can see that. Everyone can see that." Joseph did not know what to say. "I still need to work," he said. "I still need to earn a living." "I know," Mr. Kohler said. "But maybe you do not need to work as much. Maybe you could cut back your hours, focus more on music. I could hire another mechanic to pick up the slack." Joseph stared at him. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious," Mr. Kohler said. "You have worked hard for many years, Joseph. You have earned the right to do what makes you happy." Joseph felt something loosen in his chest, something he had not realized was tight. Joseph thought about Mr. Kohler's offer for several days. Cutting back his hours at the garage would mean less income, but he had savings, and his needs were modest. He owned his house outright. He had no debt. And if he taught a few more students, that would bring in some money too. The more he thought about it, the more sense it made. He was 58 years old. How much longer did he want to spend lying under cars, his back aching, his hands covered in grease? How much longer did he want to postpone the thing that made him feel alive? He accepted Mr. Kohler's offer. Starting in December, he would work at the garage only 3 days a week instead of 6. The rest of his time would be his own. Anna was thrilled when he told her. "Papa, this is wonderful," she said. "You deserve this. I am proud of you." Thomas agreed. "You have worked hard your whole life, sir. It is time to enjoy yourself." The first week of his new schedule felt strange. Joseph woke on Thursday morning, a day he would normally be at the garage, and had nowhere he needed to be. He made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, unsure what to do with the freedom. Then he went to the church and practiced for 4 hours straight. He worked on a Beethoven sonata, one of the more difficult pieces he had attempted. His fingers stumbled at first, but gradually the music began to take shape. By the end of the session, he was playing passages he had never thought he would be able to master. That evening, he taught 3 lessons, back to back. Lucas was progressing well, now working on a simple Mozart piece. The other students were at different levels, but all of them were improving. Joseph found that he enjoyed teaching more than he had expected. There was something satisfying about helping someone else discover the joy of music. As winter approached, Joseph's life took on a new shape. He worked at the garage Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The rest of the week was devoted to music. He practiced, he taught, he performed at various events around town. He felt more alive than he had in decades. Then, in early December, something unexpected happened. Joseph received a letter in the mail. The envelope was thick and formal, with an official-looking seal. He opened it and read the contents, his eyes widening. It was from the Regional Arts Council. They were organizing a concert to celebrate the 200th anniversary of a famous Czech composer who had been born in a nearby town. The concert would feature musicians from all over the region, both professional and amateur. They had heard about Joseph from Mr. Zajic, and they were inviting him to perform. The concert would be held in a large theatre in the city, a venue that seated over 500 people. It would be broadcast on regional radio. It was, in other words, a very big deal. Joseph's first instinct was to decline. This was too much, too public, too far beyond what he had been doing. Playing for small groups in churches and nursing homes was one thing. Playing in a theatre for hundreds of people was something else entirely. But before he could write a refusal, he thought about Mr. Dvorak. He thought about the old teacher who had believed in him, who had given him lessons for free, who had pushed him to audition for the conservatory. He thought about the disappointment he had seen in Mr. Dvorak's eyes when he had given up music. If Mr. Dvorak were alive today, what would he say? Joseph knew the answer. He would say, "Do it. Do not waste this opportunity. Do not let fear hold you back again." Joseph called the number listed in the letter. He accepted the invitation. The concert was scheduled for late January, which gave him about 6 weeks to prepare. He would be performing a solo piece, and he could choose what to play. He decided on a Chopin ballade, one of the most challenging pieces in the piano repertoire. It was ambitious, perhaps too ambitious, but Joseph felt that if he was going to do this, he should do it properly. He threw himself into preparation. He practiced every day, sometimes for 6 or 7 hours. His fingers ached, his back hurt, but he did not stop. He worked through the ballade section by section, mastering each passage before moving to the next. The piece was technically demanding, full of rapid runs and complex harmonies. But it was also deeply expressive, full of drama and emotion. Joseph felt a connection to it, as if Chopin had written it specifically for him. As the weeks passed, Joseph's playing improved dramatically. The daily practice was making him stronger, more skilled. He was playing at a level he had not reached, even in his youth. Anna came to visit one Sunday and found him at the church, hunched over the piano. "Papa," she said, "you have been here all day. Have you eaten?" Joseph looked up, blinking. He had lost track of time. "I am fine," he said. Anna sat down in a pew. "What is this concert you are preparing for?" Joseph told her about the invitation, about the theatre, and the radio broadcast. Anna's eyes widened. "Papa, that is incredible. Are you nervous?" "Terrified," Joseph admitted. "Then why are you doing it?" Anna asked. Joseph thought for a moment. "Because I need to," he said. "Because I spent 30 years running away from music, and I do not want to run anymore." Anna smiled. "Mama would be proud of you." "I know you are." Joseph felt his throat tighten. "I hope so." The weeks flew by. Christmas came and went. Joseph spent it with Anna and Thomas, enjoying a quiet dinner and exchanging small gifts. But his mind was always on the concert, on the music he was preparing. January arrived, cold and grey. The concert was now only 2 weeks away. Joseph was as ready as he could be. But doubt gnawed at him. What if he forgot the music? What if his fingers cramped up on stage? What if he embarrassed himself in front of hundreds of people? One evening, as he was leaving the church after practice, he found Father Miroslav waiting for him. "You have been working very hard," the priest said. "I have," Joseph admitted. "I am worried it will not be enough." Father Miroslav smiled. "Do you remember what you told me once, about why you gave up music? You said that talent was not enough, that you needed money and time and opportunities. Joseph nodded. I remember. Well, Father Miroslav said, you have time now, and you have been given an opportunity. So the only question is, do you still have the talent? Joseph did not answer. I think you do, Father Miroslav said. I have heard you play. You are better now than you were at Anna's wedding. You are better than you were when you were young. Age and experience have given you something that youth could not. You play with depth now, with understanding. Trust in that. The words stayed with Joseph. He tried to let go of his fear, to trust in the work he had done. The day of the concert arrived. It was a Saturday, cold and clear. Joseph woke early and tried to eat breakfast, but his stomach was too tight. He dressed carefully in his best suit, the same one he had worn to Anna's wedding. Anna and Thomas picked him up in the afternoon. They drove to the city together, the roads lined with snow. The theatre was a beautiful old building with columns and arched windows. Inside, it was even more impressive, with red velvet seats and a high ceiling decorated with painted frescoes. Joseph stood in the lobby and looked around, his heart pounding. This was real. This was actually happening. A woman from the Arts Council greeted him and led him backstage. There were other performers there, tuning instruments and warming up. They were all younger than Joseph, most of them in their 20s or 30s. They looked confident, professional. Joseph felt out of place. He was just a mechanic from a small town. What was he doing here? But then he remembered Father Miroslav's words. Age and experience have given you something that youth could not. He found a quiet corner and sat down, closing his eyes. He thought about Mr. Dvorak. He thought about Eliska. He thought about Anna, and all the years he had spent working and sacrificing. He thought about the moment at the wedding when he had sat down at the piano and felt the music flow through him again. This was not just about performing. This was about honoring all of those moments, all of those people, all of that history. The concert began. Joseph listened from backstage as the other performers played. They were good, some of them exceptionally good. His nerves grew worse. Then it was his turn. The announcer introduced him. Joseph Novak is a unique addition to tonight's program. He is not a professional musician, but a mechanic from the town of Brezno. After a 30-year absence from music, he returned to the piano earlier this year and has been playing with remarkable dedication. Tonight, he will perform Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. Joseph walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, and beyond them he could see the audience, row after row of faces. The theatre was packed. He sat at the piano, a magnificent grand with a rich, resonant tone. He adjusted the bench and placed his hands on the keys. For a moment, he could not move. Fear held him frozen. Then he heard a voice in his head. Mr. Dvorak's voice. Play from your heart, Joseph. That is all you need to do. Joseph took a breath. He began to play. The opening notes of the ballade were soft and mysterious, a gentle introduction that hinted at the drama to come. Joseph's fingers moved surely over the keys. The music began to build, growing louder and more intense. Joseph forgot about the audience. He forgot about his fear. He was alone with the music, with the story it told. The ballade surged and retreated, moments of calm, followed by passages of fierce intensity. Joseph played it all with complete focus, pouring everything he had into each note. He thought of Eliska, of her illness and death. He thought of Anna growing up without her mother. He thought of all the years he had spent in silence, his dreams buried. And he thought of this past year, of the music returning to his life like spring after a long winter. The piece reached its climax, a cascade of notes that demanded every ounce of skill and emotion. Joseph's hands flew over the keys, and the music thundered through the theatre. Then it was over. The final notes hung in the air. Joseph lifted his hands from the keys. There was silence. Complete, absolute silence. Joseph's heart sank. He had failed. He had made mistakes. The audience had not been moved. Then the applause started. It began slowly, then grew, swelling into a roar. People were standing up, clapping hard, shouting bravo. Joseph sat at the piano, stunned. He stood and bowed awkwardly. The applause continued. Some people were crying. Joseph looked out into the audience and saw Anna and Thomas standing in the front row. Anna had tears streaming down her face, and she was clapping so hard her hands must have hurt. Joseph bowed again, then left the stage. Backstage, other performers congratulated him. The woman from the Arts Council shook his hand. "That was extraordinary," she said. "Truly extraordinary." After the concert, there was a reception. People crowded around Joseph, asking questions, offering praise. A journalist from the radio station interviewed him. "Where have you been all these years?" the journalist asked. "Why did we not know about you?" "I was raising my daughter," Joseph said simply. "And working, living my life." "But you are playing now," the journalist said. "Will you continue?" Joseph thought about it. "Yes," he said, "I will continue." The days following the concert were strange and overwhelming. The radio broadcast had reached thousands of people across the region. Suddenly, Joseph was not just known in Brezno, but in towns and cities he had never even visited. Newspapers called asking for interviews. The Arts Council invited him to perform at other events. Music teachers from the conservatory reached out, wanting to know his story. Joseph tried to take it all in stride, but the attention made him uncomfortable. He was not used to being in the spotlight. He had spent most of his life trying to be invisible, just another working man in a small town. Now people recognized him on the street. They stopped him to say they had heard his performance. Some of them asked for his autograph. It felt surreal. Anna visited him a few days after the concert. "Papa," she said, sitting at his kitchen table, "you need to decide what you want to do with all this attention." "What do you mean?" Joseph asked. "I mean," Anna said, "you have opportunities now. Real opportunities. You could pursue music professionally. You could perform at concerts all over the country. You could even record an album." Joseph shook his head. "I am too old for that." "Too old," Anna laughed. "Papa, you are 58. That is not old. And besides, you are playing better than ever. Age does not matter when you have talent like yours." "But I am not a professional," Joseph said. "I am just a mechanic who plays piano." "You are not just anything," Anna said firmly. "You are a musician. You always have been. You just forgot for a while." Joseph was quiet. He thought about what she said. Was she right? Could he actually make music his career, even at this age? It seemed impossible. But then again, so had playing at that concert, and he had done that. "The thing is," Joseph said slowly, "I am not sure what I want." The concert was wonderful, but it was also exhausting. All those people, all that pressure. I do not know if I want that all the time. Then do not do it all the time, Anna said. Do it on your own terms. Play when you want to. Teach when you want to. You have already cut back your hours at the garage. Maybe cut back more. Maybe eventually leave the garage altogether. Joseph considered this. Could he really leave the garage? It had been his livelihood for 36 years. It was safe, predictable. But was safety what he wanted for the rest of his life? Over the next few weeks, Joseph tried to find a balance. He continued working at the garage 3 days a week. He taught his students. He practiced daily. But he also started accepting more performance opportunities. He played at a benefit concert for a hospital. He performed at a cultural festival in a nearby city. He even gave a small recital at the music school where Mr. Zajic taught. Each performance built his confidence. He was no longer terrified before going on stage. The nerves were still there, but they were manageable, even energizing. He started to understand that performing was not about being perfect. It was about connecting with the audience, about sharing something beautiful with them. In February, Mr. Zajic approached him with a proposal. "Joseph," he said, "I have been thinking. You are an excellent teacher. I have heard wonderful things about your students. Have you ever considered teaching at a more formal level?" "What do you mean?" Joseph asked. "I mean here, at the conservatory," Mr. Zajic said. "We are always looking for good instructors. You could teach private lessons, maybe even some group classes. You would be paid properly, of course. It would be part-time to start, but if it goes well, it could become more." Joseph was stunned. Teach at the conservatory. The very place he had once been a student, the place he had been forced to leave because he could not afford it. The irony was not lost on him. "I do not have a degree," Joseph said. "I never finished my studies." "That does not matter," Mr. Zajic said. "What matters is that you can play and you can teach. I have spoken with the director. He is willing to meet with you." Joseph agreed to the meeting. A week later, he sat in the director's office at the conservatory, his hands sweating. The director, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s named Dr. Malik, looked over Joseph's history. "You studied here briefly," he said, "in 1977. "Yes," Joseph said, "for 3 months. Then I had to leave. Financial reasons." Dr. Malik nodded. That was common in those days. Many talented students could not afford to continue. It was a loss for music. He looked up at Joseph. "But you kept playing, even without formal training. That says something about your dedication." "Not exactly," Joseph admitted. "I stopped playing for 30 years. I only started again recently." Dr. Malik raised his eyebrows. 30 years. And yet you played Chopin's Ballade at the anniversary concert last month." "I heard the broadcast. It was remarkable." "Thank you," Joseph said. "So what changed?" Dr. Malik asked. "Why did you start playing again after so long?" Joseph thought about how to answer. "My daughter got married," he said finally. "The pianist got sick. I filled in. And it reminded me why I loved music in the first place." Dr. Malik smiled. "Sometimes we need to be reminded of what matters." He leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Novak, I would like to offer you a position here. Part-time to start, teaching private lessons. If it goes well, we can discuss expanding your role." Joseph felt a wave of emotion. This was the place he had dreamed of belonging to when he was 17. This was the institution that had accepted him and then watched him leave. and now they were inviting him back, not as a student, but as a teacher. "I would be honored," Joseph said. He started teaching at the conservatory in March. He had 4 students at first, all of them teenagers preparing for entrance exams to music programs. They were talented and serious, much more advanced than the children he had been teaching in Brezno. Joseph found the work challenging but deeply rewarding. He was helping shape the next generation of musicians, giving them the guidance he had once received from Mr. Dvorak. One of his students, a girl named Teresa, reminded him of himself at that age. She was gifted, but insecure, constantly doubting her abilities. Joseph worked with her patiently, building her confidence, teaching her that music was not about perfection, but about expression. "You are too hard on yourself," he told her one day after a lesson. "You play beautifully, but you are so focused on not making mistakes that you forget to feel the music." "But what if I do make a mistake?" Teresa said. "What if I mess up during the audition?" "Then you recover and keep playing," Joseph said. "The judges are not looking for robots. They are looking for musicians. People who can bring something alive, who can make them feel something. Mistakes happen. What matters is how you handle them." Teresa looked at him. "Did you make mistakes at your concert? The big one in January?" "Many mistakes," Joseph said. "Small ones that probably no one noticed. But I did not stop. I kept playing. And in the end, it did not matter." Teresa seemed to take this to heart. Her playing became freer, more confident. When she auditioned for the conservatory a few months later, she was accepted. She came to Joseph's next lesson with tears of joy. "Thank you," she said. "I could not have done this without you." Joseph felt a deep satisfaction. This was what teaching was about. Not just passing on technique, but passing on belief. Belief that music mattered, that it was worth pursuing, that it could change your life. As spring turned to summer, Joseph continued to juggle his various commitments. The garage, the conservatory, his private students in Brezno, performances at different venues. It was a busy schedule, maybe too busy. But he loved every part of it. In June, Anna called with news. "Papa," she said, her voice trembling with excitement, "I am pregnant." Joseph felt his heart leap. A grandchild. He was going to be a grandfather. "That is wonderful," he said. "Truly wonderful. The baby is due in January," Anna said. "We just found out. We wanted you to be the first to know." Joseph hung up the phone and sat in his kitchen, overwhelmed with emotion. Life was moving forward. Anna was starting a family. He was teaching and performing. Everything was changing, but in good ways. In August, Joseph made a decision. He went to Mr. Kolar and told him he was leaving the garage. Mr. Kolar was not surprised. "I have been expecting this," he said. "You have found your calling, Joseph. I am happy for you." They shook hands, and Joseph thanked him for all the years of friendship and partnership. His last day at the garage was emotional. Marek and the other mechanics threw him a small party. They gave him a gift, a new set of sheet music, and a card signed by everyone. "We will miss you, boss," Marek said. "But we understand. You belong at the piano, not under a car." Joseph left the garage for the last time and drove home. He felt lighter, as if he had set down a heavy burden he had been carrying for decades. Now he was free to focus entirely on music. He increased his teaching load at the conservatory. He accepted more performance opportunities. He even started composing, something he had never tried before. Simple pieces at first, small sketches of melodies and harmonies, but it felt good to create something new, something that was entirely his. In September, the conservatory asked him to perform at their annual fundraising gala. It was a prestigious event attended by wealthy donors and prominent musicians. Joseph would be playing alongside faculty members and guest artists. The gala would be held in late October, which gave him 2 months to prepare. He decided to perform something ambitious, a Rachmaninoff concerto. Well, not the full concerto, since that required an orchestra, but a solo piano arrangement of the first movement. It was one of the most difficult pieces in the repertoire, technically demanding and emotionally intense. Joseph practiced obsessively. He worked with Mr. Zajic, who helped him refine his interpretation. He recorded himself playing and listened back critically, identifying areas that needed improvement. As October approached, Joseph felt ready. He was playing at a level he had never achieved before. All the practice, all the performances over the past year had transformed him from a rusty amateur back into a serious musician. The night before the gala, Anna and Thomas came to visit. Anna was showing now, her belly rounded with the growing baby. They sat in Joseph's living room and talked about ordinary things, about the baby's nursery, about names they were considering. Then Anna said, "Papa, are you nervous about tomorrow?" "A little," Joseph admitted, "but not like I used to be. I have learned that nerves are just part of performing. You use them to fuel the music." Anna smiled. "I am so proud of you. You have come so far this year." "It has been quite a journey," Joseph said. "I never imagined, when I played at your wedding, that it would lead to all this." "But you are happy?" Anna asked. "Yes," Joseph said. "I am happy." The next evening, Joseph dressed in a tuxedo that Anna had helped him pick out. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. He looked distinguished, confident. He looked like a musician. The gala was held in the conservatory's main concert hall, a beautiful space with perfect acoustics. The hall was packed with elegantly dressed people. Joseph waited backstage with the other performers. When his turn came, he walked onto the stage to warm applause. He sat at the piano, a tall, stunning instrument, one of the finest he had ever played. He placed his hands on the keys. This moment, right here, was the culmination of everything that had happened over the past year. All the practice, all the teaching, all the performances, all the fear he had overcome, all the doubts he had pushed aside. This was what it had all been leading to. Joseph began to play. The opening of the Rachmaninoff was dramatic, powerful chords that filled the hall with sound. His hands moved with precision and strength, striking the keys with confidence. The music was complex, demanding every bit of skill he possessed. Runs cascaded up and down the keyboard. Chords crashed like waves. The melody sang out above it all, haunting and beautiful. Joseph played with complete focus, his entire being concentrated on the music. He was aware of the audience, but not distracted by them. He was aware of the magnitude of this moment, but not overwhelmed by it. He had learned over the past year how to channel his emotions into his playing, how to use everything he felt to make the music more powerful. The piece moved through different moods. Moments of quiet reflection gave way to passages of fierce intensity. Joseph's fingers flew over the keys, executing technical passages that would have been impossible for him a year ago. But he had practiced. He had worked. He had transformed himself from a man who had not touched a piano in 30 years into a musician who could hold his own in any concert hall. As he played, Joseph thought about the journey that had brought him here. He thought about that moment at Anna's wedding when he had walked to the piano, terrified and uncertain. He thought about the first time he had returned to the church to practice, his fingers stiff and clumsy. He thought about all the hours of practice, the lessons he had taught, the performances he had given. Each one had been a step on a path that led to this moment. The music built to its climax, a torrential cascade of notes that required absolute control and absolute abandon at the same time. Joseph felt himself lifted by the music, carried along by its momentum. His hands knew what to do. His body knew how to move. He was not thinking anymore. He was just playing, just being. The final chords rang out, triumphant and powerful. Joseph held the last note, letting it resonate through the hall. Then he lifted his hands. Silence. Then applause, thunderous and immediate. People rose to their feet. Joseph stood and bowed, his heart pounding. He looked out at the audience and saw faces full of emotion. Some people were wiping their eyes. Others were clapping so hard their hands must have hurt. He saw Anna and Thomas in the third row. Anna was crying, smiling through her tears. She placed her hand on her belly, on the baby growing inside her, and Joseph felt a surge of joy so intense it almost hurt. This was for all of them. For Anna, for Eliska, for Mr. Dvorak, for the young man he had once been, who had dreamed of this exact moment. Joseph bowed again and left the stage. Backstage, he was surrounded by congratulations. Dr. Malik gripped his hand firmly. That was extraordinary, Joseph. Absolutely extraordinary. Other faculty members echoed the sentiment. The guest artists, professional musicians who had performed alongside him, treated him with respect and warmth. You have a gift, one of them said. A real gift. After the gala, there was a reception. Wealthy donors mingled with musicians and faculty. Joseph found himself talking to people he would never have imagined meeting. People from the upper echelons of society. People with influence and connections. Several of them expressed interest in sponsoring future performances. One woman, an elegant lady in her 70s, told him she wanted to fund a scholarship in his name for students who could not afford their tuition. Just like you once were, she said. We should help talented young people who need it. Joseph was moved by the gesture. He agreed immediately. Later, as he stood by the refreshment table sipping water, a man approached him. The man was perhaps in his mid-60s, well-dressed, with kind eyes. Excuse me, the man said. Are you Joseph Novak? Yes, Joseph said. The man extended his hand. My name is Pavel Dvorak. Joseph froze. Dvorak. Are you related to a music teacher? To Mr. Dvorak, who lived in Brezno. He was my uncle, Pavel said. I heard you play tonight, and someone told me you were from Brezno. I wondered if you might have known him. He passed away many years ago, but I remember he taught piano to children in the town. Joseph felt his throat tighten. He taught me, he said. When I was a boy, he was the reason I fell in love with music. Pavel's face lit up. Really? That is wonderful to hear. Uncle Jan loved teaching. He always said it was the most important thing he did. Joseph nodded, unable to speak for a moment. He thought about Mr. Dvorak, about the old man's patience and kindness, about the way he had believed in a young boy from a poor family. I owe him everything, Joseph said finally. Without him, I would never have learned to play. Without him, I would not be standing here tonight." Pavel smiled. "He would be proud of you. I am certain of it." They talked for a while longer. Pavel told stories about his uncle, about the man's dedication to music and teaching. Joseph shared his own memories. It was a gift, being able to talk to someone who had known Mr. Dvorak, being able to honor his teacher's memory. When the reception ended, Joseph drove home with Anna and Thomas. They were quiet in the car, all of them lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived at Josef's house, Anna hugged him tightly. "That was the most beautiful thing I have ever heard," she said. "Thank you, Papa." "For what?" Joseph asked. "For not giving up," Anna said. "For finding your way back to music. For showing me that it is never too late to become who you are meant to be." Joseph watched them drive away, then went inside. He sat in his living room in the dark, too full of emotion to sleep. He thought about everything that had happened over the past year. It had started with a crisis, with a sick pianist and a desperate daughter. It had led him back to something he thought he had lost forever. But he had not lost it. It had just been waiting. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Joseph taught his classes at the conservatory. He gave private lessons. He practiced daily. He also started planning future performances. There were invitations coming in regularly now. A concert series in the spring, a festival in the summer, even tentative inquiries about recording an album. Joseph was careful not to overcommit. He had learned that he needed balance, needed time to practice and teach and simply live. But he was open to opportunities. He was no longer afraid of success or attention. He had learned to accept them as part of this new life he was building. In November, Anna and Thomas asked if he would play at their baby shower. It was a small gathering, just close friends and family. Joseph agreed immediately. He played simple, joyful pieces, music that celebrated new life and new beginnings. Watching Anna, her belly round and full, surrounded by people who loved her, Joseph felt a completeness he had not felt in years. In December, the scholarship in his name was officially established at the conservatory. The announcement was made at a special ceremony. Joseph gave a short speech, talking about the importance of making music education accessible to everyone. He talked about Mr. Dvorak and how one teacher's generosity had changed his life. He hoped this scholarship would do the same for others. The first recipient was a girl from a small village, talented but poor, exactly like Joseph had been. When he met her, he saw himself in her eyes, saw the hunger and the hope. He promised to mentor her personally, to make sure she had everything she needed to succeed. As Christmas approached, Joseph prepared for the holiday with more joy than he had felt in years. He bought gifts for Anna and Thomas and the baby who would arrive soon. He attended a Christmas concert at the church, sitting in the audience this time rather than performing. He listened to the music and felt grateful for this past year, for the changes it had brought, for the person he had become. On Christmas Eve, he sat alone in his house and thought about Eliska. He wondered what she would think of all this, of how his life had transformed. He thought she would be happy. He thought she would be proud. That night, he went to the piano in the church. Father Miroslav had given him a key so he could practice whenever he wanted. He sat in the empty, dark church and played Silent Night, the carol Eliska had loved most. He played it slowly, gently, as a gift to her memory, as a way of saying thank you for the life they had shared, for the daughter they had raised, for everything she had given him. The new year arrived with snow and cold winds. January brought the date of Anna's due date closer. Joseph found himself thinking constantly about the baby, about becoming a grandfather, about holding a new life in his arms. He continued teaching and practicing, but his mind was often elsewhere, with Anna and the child she carried. On a Tuesday afternoon in mid-January, Joseph was at the conservatory teaching a lesson when his phone rang. He normally did not answer during lessons, but something made him look at the screen. It was Thomas. "Joseph." Thomas's voice was tight with excitement and nervousness. "It is time. Anna is in labor. We are at the hospital." Joseph felt his heart leap. "I will be right there." He apologized to his student, cancelled his remaining lessons for the day, and drove to the hospital in the city. The roads were icy, and he forced himself to drive carefully, even though every instinct told him to hurry. When he arrived, Thomas met him in the waiting room. "How is she?" Joseph asked. "She is doing well," Thomas said. "But it will be a while yet. The doctor says it could be several more hours." Joseph sat down in an uncomfortable plastic chair and waited. Time moved strangely. Minutes felt like hours. He tried to read a magazine but could not focus on the words. He thought about Eliska, about when she had been in labor with Anna. He had been young then, barely 24, terrified and excited in equal measure. He had paced these same kinds of hallways, waiting for news. When Anna had finally been born, when the nurse had placed that tiny red-faced baby in his arms, he had felt a love so overwhelming it had brought him to tears. Now it was happening again. But he would be a grandfather this time, 1 generation removed. Hours passed. Thomas went back and forth between the waiting room and the delivery room. He kept Joseph updated. "Everything is going fine. She is tired but strong. It should not be much longer." Finally, as evening fell and the winter darkness pressed against the hospital windows, Thomas came out with tears in his eyes and a huge smile on his face. "It is a boy," he said. "A healthy baby boy. Anna is fine. They are both fine." Joseph stood up, his legs shaky. "Can I see them?" "Yes, come on." Joseph followed Thomas through the corridors to a private room. Inside, Anna lay in bed, looking exhausted and radiant at the same time. In her arms, wrapped in a blue blanket, was a tiny baby. Joseph approached slowly, almost afraid to breathe. Anna looked up and smiled. "Papa," she said softly, "come meet your grandson." Joseph looked down at the baby. He was perfect. Tiny fingers, tiny toes, a small face scrunched up in sleep. Joseph felt tears running down his face. "He is beautiful," Joseph whispered. "We are going to name him Jan," Anna said, "after Mr. Dvorak, to honor the man who gave you music." Joseph could not speak. The emotion was too much. He just nodded and wiped his eyes. "Would you like to hold him?" Anna asked. Joseph hesitated, then carefully took the baby from her arms. Jan was so light, so fragile. Joseph cradled him gently, supporting his head the way he remembered doing with Anna all those years ago. The baby stirred and made a small sound. Joseph looked down at his grandson and felt a connection that went beyond words. This was his family. This was his legacy. Not just the music he played or the students he taught, but this. This child who would grow up in a world where his grandfather was a musician, where music was part of the family story. "I will teach you to play," Joseph whispered to the sleeping baby. "When you are ready, I will teach you everything I know." He stayed at the hospital for hours, sitting in a chair beside Anna's bed, watching her sleep, holding his grandson. Thomas dozed in another chair, exhausted from the long day. Joseph felt a peace settle over him. This was what life was about. Not just individual achievement or personal dreams, but connection, family, love, the things that lasted beyond a single lifetime. Over the next few weeks, Joseph visited Anna and Jan every day. He watched the baby grow and change, marveling at how quickly it happened. Jan's eyes began to focus. He started to recognize faces. When Joseph held him, the baby would look at him with serious, curious eyes, as if trying to figure out who this man was. Joseph continued his work at the conservatory, but he thought often about his grandson. He imagined the day when Jan would be old enough to sit at a piano, when Joseph could place those tiny hands on the keys and introduce him to the magic of music. In February, Joseph performed at a concert series in the city. The theme was redemption and second chances. Joseph was one of several artists who had come to their art later in life or after long interruptions. He played a Schubert impromptu, a piece full of beauty and melancholy. As he played, he thought about his own journey, about the long years away from music and the joy of returning. After the concert, a young man approached him. "Mr. Novak," he said, "my name is Martin. I am 28 years old, and I used to play violin when I was a teenager. I was quite good, actually. But I gave it up when I went to university. I studied engineering instead. I have a good job now, but I have been miserable for years. Tonight, hearing you play, hearing your story, it made me realize something. It is not too late, is it? It is not too late to go back to music." Joseph looked at the young man's hopeful face. "No," he said. "It is never too late. If you love music, if it is part of who you are, then you should pursue it. You will regret it if you do not." Martin nodded, his eyes bright. "Thank you. Thank you for showing me that." Joseph watched him walk away and felt a quiet satisfaction. This was part of his purpose too, not just playing and teaching, but inspiring others, showing them that it was possible to change, to grow, to return to what mattered. March arrived with the first hints of spring. The snow began to melt. Days grew longer. Joseph prepared for a busy season of performances and teaching. He also started composing more seriously. He had written several short pieces over the winter, small musical sketches. Now he wanted to create something larger, more ambitious. He began work on a suite for solo piano, a series of pieces that would tell a story through music. The story of his life, in a way. The first movement was about youth and dreams. The second about loss and grief. The third about solitude and work. The fourth about awakening and return. And the fifth, the final movement, about joy and legacy. He worked on the suite slowly, carefully, letting the music come naturally rather than forcing it. Composing was different from performing. It required patience and introspection. But it was deeply satisfying, creating something entirely new, something that was uniquely his. In April, Anna brought Jan to visit. The baby was 3 months old now, alert and responsive. Joseph held him and talked to him, telling him stories about his grandmother, about Mr. Dvorak, about the piano and music. Jan watched him with serious eyes, occasionally making small sounds. Joseph felt a profound connection to this child. After Anna left, Joseph went to the piano and played for a while. He played the fourth movement of his suite, the one about awakening. As he played, He thought about how far he had come. A year ago, he had been a man stuck in routine, living a half-life, afraid to want anything more. Now he was a musician, a teacher, a grandfather. He was living fully, embracing everything life offered. He finished playing and sat quietly, his hands resting on the keys. He thought about the future. There would be more performances, more students, more music to learn and create. There would be watching Jan grow up, teaching him about the world, perhaps one day teaching him to play piano. There would be challenges, certainly. He was not young anymore. His body would continue to age. But he had learned that age was not a barrier to growth, to change, to becoming more than you thought possible. That evening, Joseph walked through Brezno as the sun set. He passed the garage where he had worked for so many years. He passed the bakery where Eliska had worked. He passed the school where Anna now taught. He ended up at the church, the place where everything had begun again. He went inside and sat in a pew. The church was empty and quiet. Joseph looked at the piano near the altar, the instrument that had given him back his life. He thought about that day when he had walked in here, desperate and uncertain, and sat down to play for the first time in 30 years. That moment had changed everything. It had set him on a path he could never have imagined. He thought about all the people who had supported him along the way. Anna, who had believed in him. Father Miroslav, who had encouraged him. Mr. Zajic, who had given him opportunities. Dr. Malik, who had hired him. And Mr. Dvorak, who had started it all by giving Aswasian, young boy piano lessons for free. Joseph said a quiet prayer of gratitude, not to any specific deity, but to life itself, to the universe, to whatever force had guided him back to where he belonged. Then he stood and walked to the piano. He sat down and began to play, not for an audience, not for any purpose except the pure joy of making music. He played until the church grew dark, until his fingers were tired, until his heart was full. Summer came to Brezno, with warm sunshine and long golden evenings. Joseph's life had found its rhythm, a balance between teaching, performing, composing, and simply living. He no longer felt the restlessness that had plagued him in the early days after the wedding. He had found his place, his purpose, and he was content. The suite he had been composing was nearly finished. He had worked on it slowly over the months, refining each movement until it felt right. In June, he decided it was ready. He arranged a small premiere at the conservatory, inviting friends, family, and colleagues. The evening of the premiere, Joseph arrived at the concert hall early. He sat at the piano and ran through the suite one more time, making sure everything was prepared. The 5 movements flowed together beautifully, telling the story he had wanted to tell. A story of dreams lost and found, of grief transformed into beauty, of a life that had taken unexpected turns, but had ultimately led somewhere meaningful. The audience arrived. Joseph saw Anna and Thomas in the front row. Anna held Jan, who was now 6 months old and able to sit up with support. The baby looked around with curious eyes, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Father Miroslav was there, and Mr. Zajic, and Dr. Malik. His students sat together in a group, excited to hear their teacher's composition. Pavel Dvorak had come as well, honoring his uncle's memory by supporting the student Mr. Dvorak had once taught. Joseph walked onto the stage. He looked out at the faces watching him and felt calm. He was not nervous anymore. He was simply ready to share something he had created, something that came from deep within him. He began to play. The first movement, Youth and Dreams, was bright and hopeful, full of ascending melodies and joyful harmonies. It captured the feeling of being young and believing anything was possible. The second movement, Loss and Grief, was darker, more somber. The music moved through pain and sorrow, expressing the devastation of losing someone you love. Joseph thought of Eliska as he played, pouring his memories of her into every note. The third movement, Solitude and Work, was steady and repetitive, like the rhythm of a machine. It represented the years of routine, of getting through each day without joy or passion. But even in this movement, there were hints of something else, small melodic fragments that suggested hope was not entirely gone. The fourth movement, Awakening and Return, began quietly, tentatively, like someone waking from a long sleep. Then the music began to grow, to build, becoming more confident and powerful. This was the moment of transformation, of choosing to live again. The melodies soared, and Joseph felt himself lifted by the music he had created. The final movement, Joy and Legacy, was triumphant and warm. It celebrated love and family and the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. Joseph thought of Anna, of Jan, of all his students. The music was full of gratitude and hope, looking forward to a future that was bright with possibility. When the last notes faded, there was a moment of profound silence. Then the audience erupted in applause. People stood, some of them wiping tears from their eyes. Anna was crying openly, holding Jan close. Joseph stood and bowed, his heart full. After the performance, people crowded around him. They told him how moved they had been, how the music had spoken to them, how it had made them think about their own lives and choices. Pavel Dvorak shook his hand warmly. "Your teacher would be so proud," he said. "You have honored his memory beautifully." In the weeks that followed, word of the suite spread. A music publisher contacted Joseph about printing the score. Radio stations asked to broadcast a recording. There was talk of other pianists performing it. Joseph agreed to all of it, pleased that his work would reach a wider audience. But the greatest joy came from quieter moments, teaching a young student who suddenly understood a difficult concept. Watching Jan begin to respond to music, his little face lighting up when Joseph played for him. Sitting with Anna and Thomas in their home, sharing a meal, being part of their lives. One August evening, Joseph sat on his porch as the sun set, turning the sky pink and orange. He thought about where he had been a year and a half ago, and where he was now. The transformation was remarkable, almost unbelievable. But it had happened. He had done it. He had found his way back to the person he was meant to be. A car pulled up in front of his house. Anna got out, holding Jan. She walked up to the porch, smiling. "Papa," she said, "I wanted to show you something." She sat down beside him and pulled out her phone. She showed him a video someone had recorded at the wedding, the moment when Joseph had first started to play. In the video, you could see the shock on people's faces, the way they had leaned forward in their pews, unable to believe what they were hearing. You could see the tears on Anna's face as she listened, and you could see Joseph himself, hunched over the piano, his rough hands creating something beautiful. "It all started here," Anna said softly, "with you playing at my wedding, with you choosing to do something brave." Joseph watched the video and felt a wave of emotion. "Yes," he said, "it did." "And I am grateful," Anna said. not just because the music was beautiful, although it was, but because I got to see you come alive again. I got to see you become happy. That is the greatest gift you could have given me." Joseph put his arm around his daughter. "You gave me a gift too," he said. "You gave me a reason to play. You reminded me that it was worth taking risks, worth trying, even when it seemed impossible." They sat together in the fading light, Jan dozing in Anna's arms. Joseph felt a completeness, a sense that everything had come full circle. He had lost music for 30 years, but he had gained it back. And in gaining it back, he had found not just a skill or a talent, but a purpose, a way of connecting with the world and the people he loved. As autumn returned and the leaves began to change color once again, Joseph continued teaching and performing. He finished recording his suite and heard it broadcast on the radio. A strange and wonderful experience. He watched Jan grow and develop, the baby becoming more aware and responsive with each passing week. He thought sometimes about the future, about how much time he had left. He was 59 now, not old, but no longer young either. But he had learned that time was not something to fear. It was something to use well, to fill with meaning and purpose. One September afternoon, Joseph was teaching Lucas, his first student, the boy who had come to him nearly a year and a half ago. Lucas had progressed remarkably. He was now working on intermediate pieces and showing real promise. As Lucas played a Chopin waltz, Joseph listened carefully, noting the places where the boy's interpretation was strong and where it needed work. When Lucas finished, Joseph smiled. "That was very good," he said. "You have come so far." "Thank you, Mr. Novak," Lucas said. "I love playing. I want to be a musician when I grow up." Joseph felt a surge of pride and responsibility. "Then keep working," he said. "Keep practicing. Never give up on your dreams, even when things get difficult, even when it seems impossible. Because nothing is impossible if you want it enough." Lucas nodded seriously, taking the words to heart. After the lesson, Joseph sat alone at the piano in the church. He thought about Mr. Dvorak saying similar things to him when he was young. The cycle continued, generation to generation, teacher to student. The love of music passed down like a precious inheritance. Joseph placed his hands on the keys and began to play, not for an audience, not for any reason, except that he could, that he was alive, that he had been given a second chance. The music filled the empty church, rising to the high ceiling, echoing off the stone walls. And in that moment, Joseph knew that he had found what he had been searching for all his life. Not fame or recognition, not wealth or success, but simply this: the ability to create beauty, to touch hearts, to make the world a little bit brighter through the gift of music. That was enough. That was everything. The story of Joseph Novak, the mechanic who became a musician, was not just about one man's journey. It was about the power of second chances, about the courage to pursue what you love, about the way life can surprise you when you least expect it. It was a reminder that it is never too late to become who you were meant to be, that dreams deferred are not dreams destroyed, and that sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places. As the sun set over Brezno and the church grew dim, Joseph continued to play, his rough hands moving over the keys with grace and confidence, creating something beautiful, something lasting, something true.